ROI Africa did a survey about the media produced in this country during the month of June, and we took the top line stories across news media and compared them to what we at home said in social media conversation. Over a 30-day period in the month of June, the biggest stories in news media, so this is what we've been fed by journalists, was by far the Zuma question time in Parliament. That came in at 17.3% of news reporting across online, print and broadcast platforms. That was followed very closely by Eskom and the recent debacles we've seen in the media. We've struggled to take Eskom off the charts over the period of the last 6 months or so. Eskom coming in at 16.9%. And then a good news story, which is pleasant to see in news media over 30 days, is the Rugby World Cup. The future World Cup coming up, and also the commemorative news about the 1995 World Cup, where this country stood together and we had a feel-good, patriotic news reporting around that. So those were the top three stories. Stories that just missed the top three was FIFA Gate, that came in at 12.34%, and then also xenophobia was also a very big story in South Africa in the past month of June, even though we've seen that on the charts for an extended period of time. So we then took those stories and others and compared how they were spoken to in social networks. So what you and I at home spoke about on our mobile devices and electronic devices, and the results are really surprising. The biggest story by far is the Love Wins story. So the fact that there's been a legalization of gay marriage in the USA across all the states, that came in at 32.48% of us South Africans here at home, and our timelines were flooded with the gay pride flags and the rainbow of colours, etc. But when you have a look at that story in South African news media, it only generated just under 1%. So journalists didn't feed us this. This is something we picked up ourselves and really went with it. And I think it's because as social media consumers, we are really itching for something good to say and good to talk about. So 32.48% belonging to Love Wins. The second largest story, and only missing it by a nose, was FIFA Gate in South Africa, coming in at 31.5%. So almost a third of all our social media conversation focused on the FIFA scandal. The third largest story was the Zuma Q&A in Parliament. That came in at 14.05%. People still using the hashtag pay back the money. People still focusing on the EFF and DA comments within that parliamentary session. So that was also a really big story on our social networks. And just missing the top of the pile is Eskom. Still angry. Our nation is still cross about load shedding, about how we should go forward, about the fact that we're stuck in traffic. All those elements account for almost 8% of our social media conversation. The good news story that was fed to us by news journalists, so the Rugby World Cup story, featured very little in social networks, coming in at under 1% over a 30-day period when compared to those other big stories we've spoken to. As a media monitor, though, I'm really surprised by one fact, and that's the Al-Bashir story. Al-Bashir news reporting 3.43% over the month of June, and in social media 1.8%. And I think it's such an enormous story. It has such an enormous impact on our country, and our behavior was very much in the media spotlight internationally. And I think it's because people didn't grasp how big that story was, which is the reason why it featured so small on the charts. I find that unencouraging, because it's things like that that we should be grappling on in social media, and where we should be taking a stand, and where we should be making a lot more noise than we actually are. Another story that's worth mentioning is Youth Day. Youth Day in news media came in at 5% of the news reporting conversation. And in social media, again, very small amount, 0.57% as a conversation on social networks. And I find that also quite surprising about the South African media. But the month of June made for interesting reading as a media monitor.